Okay, everybody, happy October. I can't believe this. Like it's just been going so fast. Like this whole year has been going fast. So I want to just take a couple minutes to kind of go back in time as to why I created this group and why I'm so passionate about it. So not very many people are popping on to these monthly Q&As, and that's okay. I'm uploading them to YouTube, which has drawn a lot of interest. My ideal is that we're sitting together having a conversation. Like, I don't want to just be popping into Zoom, recording myself, talking about what I know. I want to have conversations with you. I want to be able to be a resource to you. I want to learn from you. I want to figure out where we're missing certain strategies, certain populations. Like, I feel like the world beyond yoga studios is so vast. And so I wouldn't say I'm frustrated, but I'm curious as to why there seems to be a block as to why people aren't more curious about figuring this out, like figuring out, how do I reach different populations? Do I have to teach in a studio? Can I teach in prison? Can I teach in um, halfway houses? Can I teach in group homes? Can I teach in assisted livings? Like, and how do I do that? How do I go about marketing myself, insuring myself, planning classes, executing classes, invoicing classes? How do I do all of this? And I don't have all the answers by a long shot. I don't have all the answers. All I know is I've been doing it for 16 plus years. I have a little bit of answers, but I don't have all the answers. And I am begging for conversation about this. I am begging. It's an isolated, lonely job. I love it, but it's lonely. And so I created this forum, this group, to bring people together who are like-minded, who want to reach people in alternative settings and want to learn and want to know how there are populations in every single community in the United States. I don't care if you're in New York City or in Los Angeles or you're in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. There are people who are living with brain injuries, living with developmental disabilities, living with dementia that need us. I don't get it. I don't get it. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox. I don't get it. Like I'm racking my brain. And honestly, if I see another post in a yoga group about how to build a sequence to a peak pose, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, did you not learn in 200-hour yoga teacher training that there are 7 other limbs to yoga than asana? Okay, I'm off my soapbox. All right. So what I want to hit with you tonight is modifying for large groups. Okay. So a lot of times we go into assisted living, we go into a group home, there's 5 or 6 people. There will be an occasion where you might be teaching to 25, 30 people with profound disabilities. How do you do that? It's organized chaos is how you do it. Okay. So here's how I learned to do it. When I first began a bazillion years ago, I knocked on my therapeutic rec program in my local city. Most cities have recreation programs where they offer softball and basketball and adult activities. There's also a little sector in that includes therapeutic recreation. Most cities have this little sector that serves people with disabilities. That could be a developmental disability, a physical disability, or both. So I knocked on my door of my city's recreation department and said, "Hey, I believe in yoga so much, and here's what I want to do." So I volunteered for 4 years. The first couple years, I had a combo class. So I had people with Down syndrome, people with autism, people with intellectual disabilities. And then I had a population of cognitively typical people who were living with multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's or a stroke. It was really hard. It was really hard to adapt and to really reach both populations. So after a couple years, the city decided like, let's separate these two populations from developmental disabilities to physical disabilities. And that made my life a little bit easier. I could plan and teach to people with Down syndrome, autism, intellectual disabilities, and then I could plan and teach to people living with multiple sclerosis or a traumatic brain injury or Parkinson's or a stroke or some. I had a lot of, not a lot, but I had a handful of people that were recent amputees. And so there's that physical side, but they have cognitive abilities. And then I had my developmental side where these are people living with lower intellectual capacity, so low IQ. And how do I make it engaging and playful? So sometimes you will come across where cities or groups, whether it's like a Goodwill Industries or other kind of corporate group homes, where you're going to get a mixed bag. How do you teach into a large group? Okay, so I'm going to say large in my world is anything over 15 to 20 people in one group. That's hard. It is really hard to keep 20 people with disabilities engaged. It's really hard because here's the deal, like we're not sitting at the front of a class in a typical class saying, okay, everybody, let's sit in easy pose, close your eyes. It doesn't happen that way, right? You're herding cats in many ways. You're herding cats. So here's how I kind of do it. I always set up in a circle, always, always, always. Even in my typical classes where I teach in my studio, I try really hard to teach in a circle because circles are unifying, right? Circles bring unity to the group. It means an embodiment of inclusion. Circles have no beginning and no end. Whatever comes into the circle stays in the circle. Whatever is on the outside of the circle remains. And so I'm a big, huge believer in teaching in a circle. So for a large group of people, or say 15 to 20 people or more, always set up in a circle. And I'm not in the middle of the circle, I'm within the circle. Okay. And so this gives an opportunity for people to be able to look across the circle and see somebody maybe that's a peer to them, or maybe it's somebody that they can look up to. Maybe it's me, maybe it's another staff member that they can kind of follow along the movement. But circles are inclusive. And I think that if we come into a teaching setting where I am the almighty teacher and you little minions are the students, we immediately have a disconnect. I also feel that when we come in as teachers and we set our students up in rows, the energy of the room becomes very splintered and very linear. It's not encompassing inclusion at all. It's very, I'm here, you're there, you listen to me, and I tell you what to do. I just don't like that. Like for my personal preference, I don't prefer that. So when I'm teaching in a large group, I sit in the circle. I'm part of the circle. I'm not in the circle. Occasionally, I will jump into the middle of the circle so that I can see everybody. I can like go up to Jesus and shake his hand and be one on one with him for a moment. But for the most part, I'm side by side in the circle. So, what I mean by engaging large groups of people, I tend to walk into the class. It's usually set up. Staff is amazing in most of my facilities at making sure that people are ready to go. I walk into the class. It's 10:30 on a random Tuesday morning. I say, "Hey, everybody, it's yoga day." And I go around and I shake everybody's hand. I make that initial connection. And then I join the group. And one of the first things I do is we gather up the breath. So I'm going to suggest, like, okay, Tuesday morning, we're all rushing to get here. Let's just put our hand on our heart for a second. Put your hand on your heart. Is it in there? Like, are you beating? I make it playful. I use humor because that reduces any sort of like anxiety. This is weird. I don't know what I'm doing in this class, but so I'm like, okay, put your hand on your heart. Are you breathing in there? Like, right? Do you feel how alive you are? Okay, let's take a big breath together. Blow out the candle. Let's do it 2 more times. Take a big breath. Blow out the candle. Just one more time. Just one more time with me. Take a breath. Now, all of a sudden, 15 to 20 people have come together in unity, in union, in yoga, in yoking. It's what we're here to do, right? So we come together and we breathe. So then what I will often do is I kind of work the room. Like I'm sitting in the circle, but I'll get up and I'll shake the person's hand next to me and I'm like, hey, John, I heard that you got a volunteer job. How's that going? And then I go to the next person. Hey, what about the Cornhuskers? He always wears a Cornhusker hat. So I listen and I pay attention to what's important to them. Like, hey, Robert, Cornhuskers, they're not doing so good. And then I go to the next person. Hey, how's your son doing? I know that you were going to see him last weekend. And then I go to the next person. I make that personal connection that kind of glues together the group. Then I teach my class, and we may or may not check in. If it's more than 15 people, doing the mind, body, spirit check in can be really, really tough. Like, it takes a long time for some of these people to get out a simple phrase of how their mind, body, and spirit is doing. So it depends on how the energy is in the group before I will commit to a 20-person check in. I love to do check ins. But if it's more than 20 people, I usually don't because it takes up too much of the class time. So I do a quick, like, little personal connection and, like, okay, I jump back in the circle and then we start our practice. And this practice can either be something that's obtainable to them, like for my seniors with dementia who have probably made more apple pies in their lifetime than I ever will in my lifetime. Like, hey, okay, it's April or it's October, sorry. It's October and it's apple pie season. And I make this up. I'm having company over this weekend and they asked for apple pie. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? And sure enough, 1 or 2 people in the group, like, we got to pick the apples first. Okay, well, let's start picking apples. And so we pick, okay, red or green apples. We take a poll, red, green, red, green. I go around the circle. I'm engaging them constantly. What color apples do you think we should pick for the pie? Green. Okay, what about you? What about you? What about you? Okay, so we've established that we need more green apples than we need red apples. I don't know how many apples to pick. Let's talk about it. How many apples do we pick? 10, 8, 6, 4, whatever. And so then we like, okay, let's pick 10 apples. And so we're going 10, super slow. 9, ooh, we got to reach to the top of the tree for the apple. Reach up there. 8, who's counting? Sure enough, somebody in the group is paying attention. All right, Miss Candy, you're in charge of counting. How many more? She says 6. So then now all of a sudden there's engagement because somebody has a job. Candy, how many apples do we have left to pick? She's like, just 4 more. All right, let's reach to the top of the tree. To the very top of the tree, we have 3 more. Is that right, Candy? Yep, that's right. 2 more. Perfect. All right, this last time we pick to the apple tree, we're going to reach all the way to the top, and then there's an apple over your head. Try to grab it. Perfect. They're all doing it. Switch to the other arm. Grab that very last apple. Perfect. Okay, so we've got our apples. Hey, Barbara, I don't know how to make an apple pie crust. You tell me how. Bing, bing, bing. Dementia goes away for a moment. This woman's made hundreds of pies. You need flour, butter, and salt. Perfect. Let's start going. Flour, butter, salt. How many times do we stir the crust, Barbara? Oh, at least 10 times. Perfect. Are you counting or am I counting? Okay. And then we grab our other spoon. Hey, John, are you paying attention? What goes in a pie crust? He says, I don't know. Hey, Barbara, help John out. Tell him what goes in a pie crust. Flour, butter, salt. We do it again. Now I'm going super fast. It's not this fast, but just for demonstration purposes, because I want to move on. I've done this before, but it's a great refresher. Okay. So let's work our brain a little bit. We're going to stir both spoons. We have flour, butter, salt. Flour, butter, salt. So keep going. You keep going. I'm going to keep talking. We have this imaginary line that runs down the center of our body. Every time we take our arm to the opposite side, we are instigating a flurry of neurons in the brain. So we're bringing harmony and balance in the brain. Keep stirring, keep stirring, keep stirring. Okay, so I'm telling you as a yoga teacher why this is so powerful. You're bringing neuron activity to the brain. You're bringing like this ignition to the brain. Like things are happening in the brain. People oftentimes get very either agitated, fatigued, or extremely happy when we do this because the neurons are starting to refire. Okay, so we might do that 3 or 4 times. Okay, pause. Let's scrape the bowl. Okay, so we're going to go opposite directions. Just 5 of them, just 5 of them. Keep stirring, keep scraping the bowl. 2 more times, 2 more times. All right, pause, take a breath. Blow out the candle. We got to roll out the pie crust. So we lean forward and back. So I'm getting into their low back. I'm finding some of that movement on the front and the back side of that imaginary line. So again, if you were to only teach, hey, we're going to balance today, we're going to work on our balance, moving the body front to back like this works the balance system. You don't have to stand on one leg. All we're doing is teaching the body, whoa, I'm off balance. Whoa, I'm pulling back. Okay, so in a very passive way, we're teaching the brain and the body to find balance. 2 more. Okay, so now we have made the pie crust. We've picked the apples. Let's fill the pie crust. We're going to scoop and fill. Okay, so opposite sides of the body works the brain, brings harmony and balance. Okay, all right, Miss Joanne, tell me how many scoops of pie filling do we need in each pie? Oh, let's do 4. Perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pies are in the oven. Take a breath. Hey, let's talk about the Broncos for a minute. I'm in Colorado, so Denver Broncos. Okay, so for the gentlemen in the group who have never made a pie in their life, I bring football into it. And it sounds crazy, but most people watch football. There's an awareness of football, okay? Especially when they live in assisted livings, people gather around the TV on Sundays and we watch football. Even the ladies kind of know football. So I kind of have a running joke, and this keeps engagement in a large group. Okay, I'm trying out for the NFL. I want to be a referee. I'm going to have a side business from my yoga teacher. I'm going to be a referee. I need your help. Okay. So I've studied some referee signals. You tell me if I'm right. Okay. But the rule is we got to do it all together. My job is to get these people who are sedentary moving and feeling sensation in their body. All right. So when the Broncos score a touchdown, the referee says touchdown. Oh, that's right. All right, everybody do it with me. Touchdown. All right, we're going to be a field goal, but we're going to kick 5 field goals. So I'm going to kick my leg. You can't see my leg, but I'm kicking. 3 more, 2 more. Let's do a touchdown again. Perfect. I'm going super fast, friends. Field goal. Hands on your head. This is safety. Tap your head, okay? Tapping the top of our head sort of brings an awareness into the brain that says, hey, 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 pay attention. Okay, we're going to turn to one side. Oh, do you feel that? Feels so good. Turn to the other side. This is safety. We're going to remember this. False start. Okay, the referee blows the whistle. This is false starts when they jump over the line before they should. Offsides, hands on your hips. Okay, so I'm just running through this super quick. Offsides. Personal foul. I'm making that X on the imaginary line. So this, in essence, according to brain science, is working the brain. Okay, personal foul. If you're a football fan, you know this. Pass interference. Okay, so my pass interference, a referee does it this way. But in yoga, we lean way forward and pull way back, just like we're rolling out the pie crust. So we might do 2 or 3 of these. Pass interference. Then we call a first down. First down, other arm. Let's do it again. First down. Perfect. First down. Holding. Taunting, make the letter T with your arms. Put your hand on your head. This is illegal man down fields. And then we're going to get a gentle stretch. Okay. And then sit really tall. Most people, I would say 90% of the students that I work with have some reference of football. They get it. It's fun. It's playful. The gentlemen in the groups think you are over the top amazing. They think you're the best. Okay. So for a lot of the guys who are forced to come to yoga and thinking assisted living, they're like, I don't want to do this. I come in and saying, hey, I need your help. I'm learning some football signals. I want to try out for the NFL as a referee. Let me know what you think. They're game in. They are all in, feet first. Okay, so touchdown, field goal, safety, offside, false start, offsides, personal foul, pass interference, holding, taunting, illegal man downfield. There's a couple more. Okay, there's intentional grounding. There's a few more. I just downloaded an NFL chart of referee signals and I learned them. I made a sequence. It works. Okay. So if I'm talking 15 to 20 people, a good 50% of them are going to know what I'm talking about. The rest of them are going to join in because it's fun. I am a huge believer in making this accessible. So we talked in the very first session, probably 6, 7 months ago. There's a difference to chair yoga, taking additional practice. Virabhadrasana 1, Virabhadrasana 2, Tadasana, and making it applicable in a chair. Okay, there's a place for it. I'm not saying chair yoga as defined by taking a traditional practice and modifying it to a chair doesn't have a place. There's absolutely a place. There's a place for accessible yoga, which is a movement, I mean, the guy's written a couple books, like he's super popular. You can follow him on Instagram. He's amazing. But again, it's using traditional practice to use props to get into a chair position of a traditional posture. And what I'm trying to bring to the world is a little bit of asana and a whole bunch more of how you show up in the world. And that's whether you're a typical body coming into my studio, or you're in an assisted living class or a group home or a hospice setting. I want it to be more than just asana. So I make it playful. And then we dive into the theme of the month. So I always theme my classes, whether you're a traditional yoga student who comes to my studio, or you are a person who's living in assisted living, you get the same theme. Okay, I talked a little bit about this before. For example, October is alignment. In September, we identified the values that mean the most to us, that make up the roots of our tree. So if we are a beautiful tree, we have 4 main roots or 4 walls of the foundation of our home that sustain us. And those values can be things like faith, family, integrity, honesty, positivity, gratitude, hope. There's so many. I have a list of over 100 values that can help your students to figure out what is most important to them when life becomes hard. That's September, kind of figuring out what your foundation is, the foundation of who you are, the foundation of your spirit, the roots that make up your tree. And then in October, we transition to taking those values and are we in alignment with them, with our thoughts, our words, and our actions? But it's really easy for our actions and our words to kind of be in alignment with what we say we are, but it's the thoughts that really get in our way. And so I teach this to a person who has full-blown Alzheimer's, a person with a traumatic brain injury, a typical person. They get the same lesson because I believe in inclusion. I believe in it so much. Like, I'm not going to dummy down a lesson for somebody who has a cognitive ability of 65. I'm not dumbing it down. Like, I believe in the potential. I'm not going to dummy down for somebody who's got Alzheimer's and is at the end of their life. They still have values. They still want to be in alignment with those values. So I teach as if I'm teaching to anybody and they get the same lesson. It might change a little bit. Like, I might bring a visual. Here's a tree This represents you. Here's your roots of your tree. This is what helps you when life gets hard. What's important to you? My family. Amazing. Yes, family's important. What's also is important to you? They often don't have an answer. What about your faith? Is faith important to you? Oh, yeah, faith is so important to me. Perfect. Let's write that down. And I help them complete this little visual worksheet of what's important to them. And then they can hang it up in the wall of their room that they live in and be like, yes, these are the 4 things that are important to me: honesty, family, faith, and hope. These are the things that are important to me. Then in October, we think about, are my thoughts, my words, and my actions aligned with my values? And we should all be able to answer this. We should all be able to say, okay, gratitude is one of my values. It's one of mine. But the minute I start participating in the collective culture where we complain that there's not enough time, not enough money, and not enough energy, we didn't get enough sleep, I'm out of gratitude and I am no longer in alignment with my value. And when I bring awareness to that, then I can then teach that awareness to other people. Okay, so I theme every single month. I take my theme into large groups, small groups, one-on-one settings. It's the same lesson. It will help you as a yoga teacher to simplify what you're teaching one time. Then you tweak it a little bit. I don't like to say I dummy it down or I modify it greatly. I just turn the dial slightly. This person might be hearing impaired. This person might be end of their life. So I'm going to really talk about faith with this person. For the person who's hearing impaired, I'm going to use a ton of visuals. I just turn the dial a little bit, but they get the same lesson. So how I modify to a large group is I participate in the group. I do meaningful, applicable movements, postures that they've seen before. And then I make a joke like, okay, your homework, Sunday football game, every time your team scores a touchdown and you see the referee do this, you better be doing it, because I'm going to be asking staff if you're practicing. And I make it playful and fun, and they love it. So the ladies like to make pies, the fellows like to do football. It just works. All right, so using props. I'm going quick because I don't want to keep you guys too long. Okay, so using props. I bring a bag of straps with me every class I go. I don't always use them, but I have a little tote bag full of yoga straps. I found Amazon is as affordable as any bulk yoga company. My people like the colorful ones. I feel like I can match their color to the shirt they have on. Like, oh, Jane, you have orange on. Would you like an orange strap to match your shirt? And that reels them in. Okay. So I have colored straps. You can have whatever color you want. It's not important, but I find the colored ones gives me a connection. Somebody loves the color blue. I can say, well, I know you love blue. Here's a blue strap. Gets them invested. I use straps almost all the time, especially in my dementia homes, because they're sitting all day long. So if I can get their legs to extend by holding onto a strap and have that leg extension, that's a bonus, because they often don't extend their legs straight ever because they shuffle when they walk and they're sitting 90% of their day. So bring out the straps. I also have this month, because this month, October, is alignment. I want to teach them awareness of alignment in their body. So most of the time I go into a home, I'm just going to change my camera a little bit. So when I go into a home, everybody's sitting in a recliner and they're sitting like this. Okay. So I come with a yoga block and I say, hey, can you lean forward for a second? They lean forward. I stick a yoga block behind them. All of a sudden they're here. Okay. So immediately I've created alignment in their spine, which is what we want, right? They're getting more oxygen to their brain because their lungs are being able to be fully inflated versus this. So using a block behind their heart center or thoracic spine just suddenly opened up their capacity to breathe. So I will use blocks for that. I will also bring blocks in I'm just going to kind of adjust my camera a little bit. But if I have blocks on the floor, and here's how I teach it in a typical class or an adaptive class. If I have a block, and I don't have any with me because I took the ones out of my office, if I have a block here, I'm going to bring the floor up 8 inches. Now all of a sudden the floor is higher. My hands can rest on the block. So I'm not asking students to go all the way down here, which can be really, really hard for most people. But now all of a sudden their hands are here on the block and it works. Here they are in a forward fold without having to strain their low back or feel like, oh, I can't reach the floor. Your hands are on the block. You've done it. Okay. So I use the block there to bring the floor up to them. Now they feel like they can be in a forward fold. Well, what happens is if my spine is like that with a block, okay. So here I am sitting. I have no idea why that person's talking to me. So something I just said made my little what's her name? Siri talk to me. Okay. So here I am sitting in a chair, a recliner chair. I'm in assisted living. Most of the time I'm here. I've put a block here. Now I'm sitting straight. I have a block here in front of their knees. So now my hands go to the block. Look how straight my spine is. I know I have a black shirt on. But if I ask them to come all the way to the floor, look how round the spine is. Now, if I'm looking for alignment this month, I'm looking for them to have alignment physically. I bring a block here, or I'm going to grab this stool. My cat's on it, but you get the gist. I might have an ottoman that the homes have nearby. So now I have an ottoman. Look how straight my spine is. So I've brought the floor up higher to them. So if I have a footstool available, I'm going to bring the footstool in front of my student and I'm going to say, all right, Miss Susan, I want you to lower your arms to the ottoman. Now look how straight my spine is. Not every 90-year-old is going to be able to do this. So you put a couple blocks here. Look at that straight spine. So I'm teaching them alignment. Now I want you to feel the stretch in your low back. Take a breath. Breathe it out. Miss Susan, your spine is in a straight line. Your spine is in a straight line, which means alignment. Okay, now we're going to sit really tall. We're going to move this ottoman away. Now, Miss Susan, I have a block right here. I don't have one with you, but you get the gist. We're going to reach for the block. Lean forward. Don't round your spine. Okay, so the purpose of using props, whether it's an ottoman or another chair or a block, is to bring awareness to their body and say, oh, you look at you. You just touched all the way down. Or I might use a block underneath a foot with a straight leg to bring the floor higher because they're not all going to be able to have a straight leg. Let me show you. Okay. So if I have my leg extended out like this, I'm pretty flexy in the hips. So I can reach forward. But if somebody who doesn't have that flexibility, don't you love my purple slippers, puts a block here underneath their foot, now the floor is higher, they can reach that foot. Okay, so using the props like blocks and belts and ottomans, black cats, whatever you have nearby, to get the body to feel the sensation. So here's what I've been telling people. Oh, my computer's about to die. Here's what I've been telling people. If we can bring awareness to the sensation we feel, then we're highly likely to bring awareness to the thoughts that we have and to the words that we speak and to what we're doing in life. Okay, it starts with awareness to the body. And then all of a sudden, we bring awareness to our thoughts, words, and actions. And then we're in the magic. Okay, let me hurry. My computer's about to die. Your role as an advocate, super quick. You go into a group home, assisted living, and you see something that is not great, Neglect, overgrown toenails, food not being offered, the smell of urine. Your job is to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. And sometimes it's super hard. Let me grab my charger because this is super important. Okay. This is super important to talk about, and I don't want to gloss over this. Give me one sec. Okay. My camera's going to change a little bit because I have a USB camera plugged in. So hold on. Okay. Let me change this. Okay. So here I am back. Looks better with the USB. Okay, so now I'm being charged. So here's the deal. You're going to go into assisted livings or group homes, and you're going to see people who, unfortunately, are not receiving the best of care. It's not that the staff are bad people. They're often underpaid, overworked, undertrained, and the thing that I find to be one of the greatest gifts of the job that I have chosen, or that has chosen me, is that I get to come into these homes and I get to see things that perhaps administrators don't often see. So when the boss comes into the home, people are on point, right? People are doing everything they can to make it look smooth and seamless. When the yoga teacher comes in, they're cooking lunch, they're changing beds, they're dealing with chaos. And you see things that maybe are more of the traditional, typical day to day than when the boss shows up. Your job, I believe, is not to be a tattletale, but to be an advocate. And advocacy is an honor. And depending on kind of the legalities of the agency that you're contracted with or the state that you're in, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's something that I know in the state of Colorado where I live, that as a person in my position, I am a mandatory reporter. And I worked in the school district for many years, and that kind of put me into that position where I'm a mandatory reporter. I know of abuse, neglect, anything like that. I am mandated to report that. I just took that into my heart as a yoga teacher, mindfulness coach, that if I go into an assisted living or a group home and I see something that seems to me is neglectful, I am a mandatory reporter. So here's how it works in my world. I ring the doorbell. All I hear is loud music coming from the home. I ring the doorbell again. This is a home I've been to for 2.5 years. I ring the doorbell again. I ring it again. I bang on the door. Nobody's answering, but I can hear loud music. I know people live there. The people that live there don't drive. So I know that there are residents in that home. Okay. So bang on the door, ring the doorbell. Nobody's answering. The garage door is open. So I walk around to the garage door. I enter into the garage door. I bang on that door. Nobody answers. Because I've been in this home for 2.5 years, every other week, I just walk in. It's totally your call, but I walk in. Staff is sitting at the kitchen table. Rap music, whatever music, rock and roll, whatever's on, is so loud they can't hear me knocking. That's a red flag to me, because people with traumatic brain injuries have a sensitivity to noise. They need structure and routine. They need predictability. They need a purpose. They need a reason why to get up every morning. And I walk in the door, and that's a red flag to me. Okay. So the staff worker jumps out of her skin when she sees me, turns the music off, and says, "Okay, I'll go get everybody." Well, nobody's ready because everybody's sleeping, or they're in the shower, or they're not ready. And so time is being wasted. They're contracting with me to provide services. They know I'm coming because I've emailed them the day before and said, "Remember, it's the second Tuesday of every month. Here's where I'm going to be." I list the locations where I'm going to be with this agency. So they're very well aware that I'm coming. I've been coming the second and fourth Tuesdays for the last 2.5 years, but benefit of the doubt, I always send an email. So residents finally trickle out of their bedrooms, disheveled, whatever. Somebody says, one of the residents says, well, we were supposed to go grocery shopping yesterday, but staff decided not to. That's another red flag. Okay, so they need to have access to the community. A woman says to me, I haven't been able to go to church in months because nobody will take me. That's a huge red flag. People with disabilities, all humans have rights to access, disabled or not, have a right to access their religion. So already I've had 3 red flags. Nobody's answering the door, which plays a huge hazard to me. If they can't hear me knocking, are they going to hear people crying for help? Has somebody fallen in the shower and nobody can hear them? That's a red flag. So that's number 1. Number 2 is people are waking up disheveled, not sure where they're going, what they're supposed to be doing. They're tired, they're discombobulated. They mentioned that they haven't been able to go grocery shopping. They have a right to access the community. That's number 2. Access to religion. That's number 3. Then I happened to look at one of the residents' hands, and his fingernails are grown over his fingertips. So my job, I feel, is to let the administrators know, here's what happened when I showed up. I don't make assumptions when I report in. I don't say the staff was being neglectful. I don't make any accusations whatsoever. I'm strictly factual. I rang the bell 3 times. I banged on the door 3 times. I went to the garage door 3 times. I entered the home. Loud music was present, period. Number 2, X, Y, and Z stated that they were not able to get groceries yesterday due to lack of staff transportation. Student A, B, and C stated that she was not able to get to church Sunday because there was no transportation. And student ABC, fingernails were growing over the nail. Factual. Okay, so that's where we, as people who come into the home, we act as advocates, but we're not tattletales. Okay, so we don't want to burn bridges. We don't want to be that one person that just comes in and ruins the party for everybody, but we also want to be the voice for people who can't necessarily speak. So it's really important to build a great rapport with the administrators of the agencies and the staff on the ground, right? So I've come into a couple situations where I have great relationships with the administrators, but the staff in the homes, they don't like me because I am a whistleblower, because I am an advocate, because I do say, hey, this isn't right. And then I reach out to the administrators, and the administrators calls the staff on the carpet. So it's hard. You're in a position where your job is to make sure that the human beings that you're in front of are being treated with the most dignity possible. And you also need to have a working relationship with the staff on the ground, because administrators, as great as they are, they often have no idea what's going on and how hard the job is of the day-to-day 12-hour shifts, minimal paid, minimal trained people that are doing hard work. So it's a fine line to do the right thing, but not be overly critical to those hourly waged people who are doing their best. Okay. So try not to get, all I'm saying, I guess, in my experience, is to try not to get too emotionally involved in assuming that the staff don't care, but just recognize that oftentimes the staff is undertrained and underpaid and overworked, and they're just hanging on by a thread. So try not to be overly critical, but advocate where you need to advocate. And it's hard. It's one of the hardest places that you will be put into, because you don't want to burn bridges, but you also want to be the voice for the people who don't have voices. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about, I'm at 7:46, so I want to make sure I don't go over more than 50 minutes. It's a lot of talking. So invoicing and payment. I've talked about this before. I use an app called Invoice to Go, which I pay for annually. I can't remember how much it is. It's super affordable, But it's been cool to see over the years that I've been invoicing for agencies. It keeps a tally of how much earnings you have invoiced. And to me, that's motivating, not because I'm money driven, but to see like, wow, my hard work is really making a difference in a lot of people's lives and in my own life. Like I get to do this full time. This is a treasure to me. So I use Invoice to Go and I invoice monthly. So I write down in my paper planner all of the locations I go to. Now, if one of the locations has COVID or they're out of the building or something, I just make an X and I write a little notation in my book. When the end of the month comes, usually on the 29th or 30th, I sit down, I tell the people in my life I need an hour uninterrupted, and I just start invoicing. So each agency gets their own invoice. I invoice per date. So, for example, I'll write 10 to whatever house number 30, yoga. And then I put in my rate and then I go to the next date. 10-4, house number 32, put in my rate. 10-5, house number 1, put in my rate. And so I continue like that. I don't do like an overall yoga services. I prefer to designate each date that I was in a building and what location I was at. So a lot of agencies have more than one location. And so I like to designate on this Tuesday, I was at this location and here's what my rate was. And that just keeps it clean to me. I'm not saying, oh, yoga services for this agency was a random number. I'm showing the administrators, the CEO and the COO and the CFO, like, I was in this house on this day and this is my rate. If I go into a house or I knock on the door or I ring the doorbell and they say, oh, sorry, we have COVID, you can't come in, I write that on my invoice and I don't typically charge for travel, especially in a case like that. Like, I'm a yoga teacher, they're the last people I'm going to talk to. Like, I don't know that it's on their radar to reach out to me. I give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, they're trying to keep people alive. They're probably not going to remember me. So I might put 10-5, house number 20, COVID, no charge. And then I put 0 in the charge box. So that's how I do it. I will tell you for the majority of my agencies, the day that I go in, the day of, I send a quick email to whoever my contact person is and I say, hey, I'm going to be at this location at this time, just a reminder. So that then a lot of them will send an email to that particular house staff and say, hey, the yoga teacher is going to be coming by around 11. Then the staff is ready for me, the residents are ready for me, and it's so much easier. I send out a monthly calendar, but that gets lost in the shuffle. So I have a great working relationship with all of my agencies' contact point. So on a day-to-day basis, the days that I teach, which is almost 5 days a week, that morning when I'm getting my coffee and I'm getting ready for my day, I will send a quick email and say, hey, I'm going to be at house number 15, 12, and 10 today. Perfect. I send it off. They usually send me back and say, thank you. At the end of my day, I go back to that email and I wrote house number 10, X, Y, and Z did a great job today. So and so was a little bit off. House number 12, so and so did great. Blah, blah, blah. House number 15, no participation today. I'll try again next month. And I give documentation of every single class that I'm in. It seems like a lot of work, but when you get into the swing of it, it takes literally a minute of your life. That builds relationship, it builds trust, it builds rapport, and it builds a huge amount of communication back and forth with the administrators and you, which is so important because they're going to remember you when house number 13 has COVID and you don't make an extra trip 45 minutes out of your way to only be found out that they have COVID. So I recommend going that extra step to communicate with the contact point in the agency. It will make your life better in the end. Seems like a lot of work. It's not a lot of work at all. You get really good at it. Use the note section in your phone, whether it's an Android or an Apple, and just title it an agency. So, Better Homes Agency. And then in that folder in your note section, you might have 5 different locations, whatever. Location number 1, here's who lives there. Here's the staff who are primarily there. House number 2, blah, blah, blah. House number 3, and make notes so that when you go back the next month, I always look at my notes. I'm like, oh, okay, house number 20. Oh yeah, Gertrude, Bob, John, and Susie. I have little notes like Susie was grumpy, Bob has a cat, whatever. I make notes, and then I can go in and to them, it seems like I know who they are. I don't know who they are, but I'm like, hey, Bob, how's your cat? Hey, Susie, I heard you, blah, blah, blah. And it just gives a personal touch to it. And it means so much to the residents, but it also means a lot to the staff that you're going that extra step to remember them. Okay, so invoicing and pricing, you have to figure out your own price point. I could work with you personally on that, like tell you where I started and where I'm at now. I will tell you I don't charge a lot. Maybe a business mogul would say you're working way too hard for the amount of money you're making, but I make so much in fulfillment that the money is really secondary to me. I'm grateful that I get money for this, and it is my full-time income. It is my job, but I'm not doing it for the money. And I believe that that's returned to me a million times over. So I don't get fixed on the money. If you have a certain price point that you feel you're valued at, let's talk about it. I'd be happy to work with you one-on-one on that and have a conversation about it. And we can talk about it. We can talk about what my experience has been and what you feel like you're worth, and we'll talk about it. I'm happy to do that. I like learning from people and their perspectives around money. Okay, so invoice to go. I would say the biggest thing with invoicing is to communicate with the agency. Find a contact person, let that person be your go-to, communicate with them often. Tell them when you're going to be there, tell them what you're working on. Here's my lesson, here's my visual, here's where I want to go with this. I'm bringing straps and blocks. Just give them as much information as you're comfortable giving them, because I have found in my experience, administrators love to know that stuff. They're not bothered by it. They actually love to know what you're bringing to their agency and why. Why is so important, right? Okay, so let me just check my notes, make sure that I said everything I wanted to say I wanted to do. Okay, modifying for large groups, covered it. Football and making pies. Using props, I love straps and blocks. You can also use other chairs, walls. You can use your body. A lot of times I will have people hold my hands. I pull them into a forward fold and I'll say, all right, pull me up, pull me up. They're using their back and upper body strength to pull me up. So use yourself as a prop too. Don't be afraid to touch people. It's super important to have that human connection. Invoicing and payment, we just covered, and then your role as an advocate. It's sticky, it's hard, it's brushing on ethics. If you have questions more in detail about that and you want to ask me some specifics, just reach out to me. So simple. So, okay, I'm hoping that this was useful to you. It feels good to me. I'm grateful to have this forum to share what I know. I'm hoping that you're learning as we go and that you are formulating some questions, and maybe you're curious about what does this look like in your community, because I'd be happy to help you get your foot in the door. I know there's a couple people who are in this group who I've helped kind of encourage along the way to like reach out and used, a little bit of the marketing material that I have created over the years, and it's good. So if you want a little bit of help, just reach out to me. Know that it's available. And if you feel like you got it, that's great. Share with me your tips and tricks, because I'm always learning as well. I want this to be a partnership. Okay. So I'm going to close off this. I'll pop this up on my YouTube. If you're not a subscriber, feel free to do that. I have a weekly Sunday practice. It's kind of fun, just playing around on the mat, you and me. If not, I will see you next month in November. Crazy. This year's flying by. So I look forward to talking to you. If you have questions, please reach out to me. Let's keep the conversation going. I'll post this in the Facebook group so that we can continue to have conversation, answer questions. All right. I kept it under an hour. All right. I'll see you guys next month. Take care.